Ketogenic dieting, or low carb dieting as some people call it, is tricky no matter what country you're in. But since I live in China, a lot of people have been asking me, since I've mentioned that I am a low carber, as people call it, how do I pull it off in China, because it's such a carb heavy country. Because a lot of people are interested in doing this diet, either for weight loss or a lifestyle choice, and they find it difficult to actually pull off here in China. So today I'm going to tell you how I've pulled it off. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, this video is not to tell you you should go low carb, and I don't want to see the comments downstairs saying, oh, low carb diets are bad for you, whatever. This is for people that already know kind of what a low carb diet is and the benefits and what they want to see from it. So this is how I pulled it off in China. Now, before I shot Conquering Southern China, the TV show that we did, me and Serpent Zade did back in October, I wasn't really happy with how much weight I had put on. I've never been a fat guy. Growing up, I was never fat. I've always been in pretty good shape. But I put on quite a bit of weight here in China, and I think that was due to, slowing metabolism, less exercise in my life. But anyway, long story short, I wanted to drop some weight really quickly, so I looked into the ketogenic or low carb diet. And it turns out it wasn't actually that hard to pull off here in China. And I ended up going from 93 kilograms all the way down to 78 kilograms. So if you go back and look at some of the old videos, you'll see quite a difference. I feel incredibly better, high energy now. I feel like I could go for days. I'm never really hungry, and I kind of eat whatever I want. It's gotten to a point now where I don't really care about not eating carbs. I don't feel like I'm missing anything in my diet. Anyway, long story short, the first thing you got to understand is that nobody here in China is gonna understand what low carb dieting is. They won't comprehend it. It's the same as anywhere else. People are gonna wonder why you don't eat carbs. People are gonna wonder why you don't want to eat dessert, why you don't touch sugar, why you don't touch rice, all these things. And it's really difficult to explain to them, but I'm gonna give you some phrases that you can say that might actually help out your case and avoid some awkward situations. The first thing is if somebody asks you why you're not eating carbs or rice, you can say 我要减肥, which means I want to lose weight. So if people don't understand why this is a good weight loss technique, you can also say that you have diabetes. Now, if you don't know the people very well and you don't care what they think about you, you can just say you have diabetes, because Chinese people really, they're very familiar with this disease, and they understand that if you have diabetes, you have to avoid things that have sugar in them, like desserts and sweets and rice and all that kind of stuff. If you want to say you have diabetes, you say 我有糖尿病, 糖尿病. That means I have diabetes. You can also say 我不吃淀粉, which means I don't eat starch, right? And it can lead into a multitude of questions after that, but if you're at a meal with understanding people, they'll be like, okay, I understand, right? And it should be okay. If you're at a meal and you don't want them to include rice or noodles, you can say 我不吃面, 我不吃饭, 不要面, 不要米饭. These phrases mean that you don't want noodles, I don't want rice, and this is a helpful asset to mealtime if you're trying to go low carb. Now, when you're going out to eat in China, it's going to be pretty difficult to explain to people why you're low carb, but there's a lot of things you can do to avoid carbs at the dinner table. For example, order meat, right? Meat is plentiful here in China. It's fairly cheap. You can get beef and pork and chicken pretty much everywhere. It's not really an issue to find meat at the dinner table, and it's absolutely great. Some of the preparations, some of the dishes in China are absolutely fantastic. Like this meatball, guaranteed to have no carbs for me, right? But because Chinese people are used to eating noodles or rice at pretty much every meal, you're gonna have a lot of noodle and rice-based dishes here. Those are things that you're obviously going to avoid. Obviously, things like baozi or steamed buns or dumplings are out of the picture. I know that's pretty sad, but there's a lot of good alternatives. For example, there's a lot of dishes that are not made with any carbs whatsoever. Usually rice is on the side, and all you have to do is refuse that. So you can get dishes like this. This is an eggplant dish, and it's great. It's made with no carbs, but you got to watch out for these things. For example, this fish. This fish here has been coated in a batter, a starch batter, which means that it does include carbs. You have to look out for meats and make sure that they haven't had starch added to the outside. It's usually pretty easy to tell. Sometimes you have to ask if they actually included starch in their meat preparation or fish preparation. So in this case, you would ask them, 有没有淀粉?有没有加淀粉? If they added starch to the outside of it, just to be sure. Another favorite is 番茄炒蛋. This dish can be found everywhere around China. It's your basic fried eggs and tomato dish. And the problem with that is a lot of the times the traditional recipe calls for the addition of sugar, and that can kill you. It can kick you right out of ketosis. So you got to be careful. It seems like a safe dish to order on this diet, but it's not a lot of times. So you got to make sure that they don't add sugar. So when I ordered this egg and tomato and shrimp dish, I said, 不加糖, don't add sugar to this dish. One of the best life changes I've had here in China on this diet was the fact that I'm kind of forced to go out to the plentiful markets. Wet markets, dry markets, there's markets everywhere in China, and that means cheap and plentiful produce. And it kind of forces me to learn new recipes and cooking techniques, and I'm pretty much cooking at home 5 days a week now. So it means I'm in control of my diet. It means I'm not cooking carbs. It means I'm not accidentally eating carbs as well. And the 2 or 3 days I eat out per week, I'm making sure that I'm pretty vigilant about what I'm ordering. And through a painstaking process of trial and error, basically, I figured out what I can eat and what I can't eat. Anyway, the whole point of this video is that ketogenic diet, low carb diet is actually possible here in China. Read the labels. You're gonna need to know exactly what the labels say. When I first came here in China, labels for nutrition were kind of hard to find. Nowadays, they're pretty much consistent all over food packaging. The word for carbohydrates in Chinese is 碳水化合物, which means carbohydrates or carbs. Now, this will be found anywhere on food packaging, on sodas, drinks, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, when you're at a restaurant, you're not going to be able to check that. So you're going to have to know what kind of foods add sugar, add starch, add flour, and you're going to have to be pretty vigilant about that. Now, the great thing about China is that you can ask the waiter pretty much anything, and they'll go back and check for you. It's not considered rude. You can ask questions all day and all night about how the food is made. Some of the restaurants will even let you back in the kitchen, have a look, make sure everything is prepped to your specification. And there's a lot of ways that you can convince them to go do that. Say you have a medical issue, say you have a food allergy or something like this. It usually works out. Last thing I'll throw in there is Taobao. Taobao.com, you can order coconut oil, low carb bread, low carb options. Everything that you can get back home can pretty much be found on Taobao.com. And I supplement a lot of my grocery shopping with items from Taobao.com, so very, very useful. Thank you so much, Laowinners. I just wanted to share my success story with low carb dieting and actually tell you the fact that it is absolutely positively possible here in China. So stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks.